Kentucky.
Hard power.
We're in a quorum call.
I suggest that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Hard power is the cornerstone of U.S. national security. It's the credibility behind our commitments to defend our core interests. And investing accordingly is among Congress' core responsibilities. I'm proud that the Senate will uphold that responsibility today by passing a full-year defense appropriations for the fiscal year 2026. Our action today is urgent, important, overdue, and yet insufficient. Allow me to briefly remind our colleagues what this vote represents. About a year ago, I offered the incoming administration a few recommendations on the nature of American power and what it would take to sustain it in the face of grave and growing threats. I urged them to push for sustained year-on-year increases to the defense top line, to prioritize investments in the industrial base that equips both America and our allies, and expand the use of multi-year procurement contracts to solve glaring shortages of critical munitions. Suffice it to say, the President's advisors didn't initially seem to heed this advice. In fact, senior budget and defense officials welcomed the first full-year continuing resolution for the military in history, a move that effectively left the Pentagon operating on President Biden's budget and handicapped President Trump's efforts to restore peace through strength. Then they went about trying to internally cut 10% of the military services, setting arbitrary budget reduction quotas that shortchanged growing military requirements. Even the administration's first official budget request left much to be desired. Indeed, defense appropriations received a fiscal year 26 defense budget request from OMB that would have amounted to a net cut after inflation and a continuation of the Biden approach to discretionary appropriations. As the President's foremost national defense priorities, however, came into focus, from homeland missile defense to shipbuilding renaissance, the inadequacy of his administration's budget request became undeniably clear. And what about the budget reconciliation process that could have been optimized to make one-time investments in critical sectors of the defense enterprise? Administration budget officials treat it like a shell game. Much of the Defense Subcommittee's most arduous work in recent months has been helping the armed services address real, urgent operational shortfalls that were created when much of Washington decided to pretend that a one-time infusion of cash could take the place of consistent annual appropriations. To be clear, this was not the intention of my friend, Chairman Roger Wicker, who's been a far-sighted advocate for sustained increases in annual defense spending. But OMB's effort to shift major long-term funding priorities from the base budget to reconciliation didn't just suddenly obviate the need for steady full-year appropriations. In fact, it just created additional challenges. The full-year bill we're passing today reflects great efforts on the part of Senate appropriators to make up for growing funding shortfalls that are stifling the department's ability to deliver the president's military priorities. These aren't smart, little bitty shortfalls. The administration has acknowledged fiscal year 26 funding gaps of at least, now listen to this, $40 billion. The president's Golden Dome and Golden Fleet will not be built on a bronze budget. That's precisely why Senate appropriators marked a bill that would have exceeded the president's budget request by $22 billion. The conference bill we're voting on today comes in at $14 billion below that top line. So the final bill is only $8.4 billion above the president's request. Clearly, that's not enough to cover an official request for $28 billion in munitions that came in while we were conferencing the bill. Request for $28 billion in munitions came in while we were conferencing the bill. Clearly, it's not enough to cover the $40 billion in shortfalls identified by the department. But within our limited top line, this bill makes modest but important down payments on key priorities for the military: critical munitions, shipbuilding, sixth-generation fighter aircraft, missile defense, and more. In any event, it was always clear that glaring challenges, particularly to the industrial capacity and defense innovation, would not be solved in a single budget cycle. This is the business of years upon years, and it will require, at the most basic level, a renewed recognition of the centrality of hard power. 12 months into the president's term, I'm hopeful that appropriators will have more allies in our work to deliver consistent and increasing full-year resources. The president, for his part, indicated an ambitious goal for the coming year, a 2027 defense budget of $1.5 trillion. Needless to say, building toward this target next year would be a lot easier if we had been able to make more headway this year. Going forward, every stakeholder is going to have to acknowledge that we can't nip and tuck our way to building the military we need to meet growing threats. When administration officials tell the department at the 11th hour to finally make more room for investments in critical munitions, they ought to be ready to join us in advocating for a higher top line, not expect warfighters to take it out of hide. Regardless of whether we're willing to put our money where our mouth is on national defense, we face adversaries who are. And they'll continue to pose growing threats to our security and to our interests. So again, our work is far from over. But as we take this significant step in the right direction, I'd be remiss So as we take this significant step in the right direction, I'd be remiss in not acknowledging the dedicated collaborative efforts of colleagues who recognize the importance of the task at hand, particularly Chair Susan Collins. Clearly the most outstanding Appropriations Chair in the time that I've been here. And my counterpart, Riskin, both have been fabulous supporters. I'm also deeply grateful to the talented professional staff who have given so many nights and weekends to pull fiscal year 26 appropriations finally across the finish line. On the majority side, Rachel Tapivi, Laura Forrest, Megan Handel, Cole Hodge, Alexa Lorick, Todd Phillips, Catherine Plunkett, Kim Segura, Tom Schaefer, Elise Stabamic, and of course, the fearless leader to the left here, Robert Karam. We've been friends and collaborators for a long time, and there's nobody better on this subject. And I know my team has appreciated close collaboration with their counterparts on the minority staff, including Gabriella Amona, Dylan Bird, Abigail Grace, Bridget Kolish, Brian Pettit, led by Rob Leonard. My sincere thanks are with each of them for their devotion to such a worthy task. But as Henry Kissinger observed, each success only buys an admission ticket to a more difficult problem. So after taking the weekend, to catch their breath, I look forward to welcoming them, the team, back to the Appropriations salt mine next week. The President's $1.5 trillion defense budget for next year is a worthy goal, and after Congress finishes its work on fiscal 26, we'll stand ready to do our part to help him achieve it. I yield.